What if I told you the most beloved Christmas film ever made was considered a complete failure when it was released? What if the star who played George Bailey was suffering from severe trauma that made his breakdown completely real? What if the director who created this masterpiece saw it destroy his career and bankrupt his studio? James Stewart had just returned from World War II and was questioning if his own life had meaning. The FBI investigated the film as possible communist propaganda during the Red Scare hysteria. The studio abandoned it so completely that it fell into public domain by accident. And the film that now represents hope almost ended the careers of everyone who made it. These are 20 heartbreaking facts fans still miss. Before we dive into video, please subscribe to our channel. Fact 1. The film was a box office disaster. It's a Wonderful Life was a devastating commercial failure when it was released in 1946. The film cost approximately $18 million, which was enormous for that era of filmmaking. It earned only about $3 million during its initial theatrical run, barely breaking even. RKO Pictures lost significant money when marketing and distribution costs were factored into calculations. Audiences in 1946 were not interested in a dark story about suicide and despair. They wanted escapist entertainment after years of war and sacrifice and suffering. The film that now seems essential was ignored by the very generation it was made for. Frank Capra watched his passion project die quietly in empty theaters across America. Fact 2. James Stewart was suffering from war trauma. James Stewart had just returned from World War II when he made It's a Wonderful Life. He had flown 20 combat missions as a bomber pilot over Nazi Germany personally. Stewart witnessed death and destruction that haunted him for the rest of his life. The trauma we now call PTSD affected him deeply during production of this film. His emotional breakdown scene on the bridge was informed by real despair he was experiencing. Stewart later said he was not entirely acting during George Bailey's darkest moments. The tears and the shaking and the desperate prayer came from somewhere genuine inside him. Fact 3. Stewart could not stop crying during the final scene. The final scene where George Bailey is reunited with his family was emotionally overwhelming. James Stewart broke down in genuine tears that he could not control during multiple takes. Director Frank Capra kept the cameras rolling as Stewart wept with authentic emotion completely. The joy and relief visible on screen came from a man who understood what it meant to survive. Stewart was crying for George Bailey, but also for himself and everyone who came home from war. The other actors were moved by his genuine emotion, and their reactions are equally real. The celebration that closes the film was created by real human beings experiencing real catharsis. No amount of acting training could have manufactured what Stewart delivered in that moment. Fact 4. Frank Capra mortgaged everything. Frank Capra risked his entire financial future on It's a Wonderful Life completely. He formed Liberty Films specifically to make this project with complete creative control. Capra mortgaged his home and invested his life savings into the production budget. The failure of the film left him in serious financial difficulty for years afterward. Liberty Films collapsed and was sold to Paramount Pictures at a significant loss. The director, who had won 3 Academy Awards, saw his career effectively ended by this failure. Capra never fully recovered his position in Hollywood after this devastating setback permanently. The man who believed in wonderful lives saw his own life become considerably more difficult. Fact 5. The FBI investigated the film. The FBI investigated It's a Wonderful Life as possible communist propaganda during the Red Scare. Agents believe the portrayal of the banker Mr. Potter was an attack on American capitalism. The file noted that the film tried to discredit bankers and promote socialist ideals dangerously. The investigation was part of a broader effort to root out communist influence in Hollywood. Frank Capra, who was deeply patriotic, was stunned by the accusation and investigation. The idea that his celebration of small-town American values was communist seemed absurd entirely. The FBI file remained classified for decades before being released to the public eventually. A film about the American dream was investigated as an attack on America itself. Fact 6. Donna Reed was not the first choice. Donna Reed, who played Mary Bailey, was not Frank Capra's first choice for the role. Jean Arthur, who had starred in several Capra films, was originally considered for Mary. Ginger Rogers was also discussed before the production settled on Reed finally. Reed was relatively unknown, and the casting was considered a risk by the studio executives. She brought a warmth and authenticity to Mary that more famous actresses might not have achieved. Reed's performance grounded the fantasy elements in genuine human emotion throughout the film. Her chemistry with James Stewart created one of cinema's most beloved screen couples ever. The unknown actress became unforgettable through this role that almost went to someone else. Fact 7. The snow was a new technology. The snow in It's a Wonderful Life was created using a new technology developed specifically for this film. Previous Hollywood snow was made from painted cornflakes that were noisy when actors walked on them. The sound of crunching cornflakes made dialogue recording impossible during snowy scenes traditionally. RKO developed a new mixture using foamite and sugar and water that was silent underfoot. The innovation won a Technical Achievement Award from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. The beautiful snow that covers Bedford Falls was a technological breakthrough that changed filmmaking. Every snowy scene in Hollywood afterward benefited from what was invented for this production. The magic of Christmas snow was literally invented to tell this particular story effectively. Fact 8. Lionel Barrymore was in constant pain. Lionel Barrymore, who played the villainous Mr. Potter, was suffering from severe arthritis throughout filming. The wheelchair his character uses was not a prop, but a medical necessity for Barrymore. He could barely walk, and was in constant pain during every day of production schedule. Barrymore channeled his physical suffering into the bitterness and cruelty of Mr. Potter. The hatred visible in his performance was fueled by genuine misery he was experiencing daily. Despite his pain, Barrymore delivered one of cinema's most memorable villain performances ever captured. He transformed his disability into an asset that made Potter even more threatening somehow. The man in constant agony created a character who inflicts agony on everyone around him. Fact 9. The bridge scene was freezing. The bridge scene where George Bailey contemplates suicide was filmed in brutal, cold conditions. The set was refrigerated to create authentic breath vapor and winter atmosphere visibly. James Stewart stood on that bridge for hours in temperatures that caused genuine physical distress. His shivering and discomfort during the scene are completely real rather than performed. The cold added authenticity but also created health risks for the cast and crew. Stewart later said he could not feel his hands or feet by the end of filming. The desperation visible in George Bailey was enhanced by genuine physical suffering throughout. Art required sacrifice, and Stewart paid the price with his comfort and well-being. Fact 10. The film fell into public domain. It's a Wonderful Life fell into public domain in 1974 due to a clerical error by the studio. Someone failed to renew the copyright and the film became free for anyone to broadcast. Television stations began airing it constantly because they owed no licensing fees whatsoever. The film that had been forgotten became inescapable during every Christmas season suddenly. Ironically, the failure to protect the copyright saved the film from obscurity permanently. Millions of Americans discovered it through repeated television broadcasts throughout the 90s, 70s, and 1980s. The accident that should have cost the studio money instead created a cultural phenomenon. A bureaucratic mistake transformed a forgotten failure into an essential Christmas tradition accidentally. Fact 11. Capra considered it his finest work. Frank Capra always considered It's a Wonderful Life his greatest achievement despite its failure. He said the film represented everything he believed about human nature and community values. Capra poured his entire philosophy into George Bailey's journey from despair to redemption. The director who made Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and Mr. Deeds Goes to Town saw this as their culmination. He believed the message about individual worth was the most important thing he ever said. The failure hurt Capra deeply because the film meant so much to him personally. He lived long enough to see it become beloved, but the initial rejection never fully healed. The artist saw his masterpiece rejected and then embraced, but the wound remained. Fact 12. Henry Travers created an iconic angel. Henry Travers, who played the angel Clarence, was 72 years old during production. His gentle, bumbling performance created one of cinema's most beloved supernatural characters ever. Travers brought warmth and humor to what could have been a preachy role easily. His chemistry with James Stewart made the fantasy elements feel grounded and believable. Clarence earning his wings became a moment that audiences waited for with genuine emotion. Travers received an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor for this performance. The elderly actor created a character that would be referenced and imitated for decades. Every cinematic angel since owes something to what Henry Travers achieved in this film. Fact 13. The alternate reality was groundbreaking. The Pottersville sequence where George sees a world without him was groundbreaking for cinema. The dark alternate reality anticipated narrative techniques that would not become common for decades. The transformation of Bedford Falls into the corrupt Pottersville was visually and emotionally devastating. Audiences saw how one person's absence could change an entire community for the worse. The sequence influenced countless films and television shows that explored alternate timelines afterward. The technique of showing what would happen without the protagonist became a storytelling standard. Frank Capra pioneered a narrative device that filmmakers still use constantly today. A 1946 film invented a storytelling technique that feels modern even now. Fact 14. The bell scene has become sacred. The final moment when a bell rings and Zuzu announces Clarence got his wings became sacred. The simple image of a Christmas tree bell has become loaded with emotional meaning for millions. Families watch for that moment every year as the culmination of the entire film. The bell has been reproduced and sold as merchandise representing the film's message completely. Churches have used the bell imagery in sermons about faith and divine intervention regularly. A small prop became a symbol that transcends the film itself entirely and permanently. The sound of a bell ringing now carries meaning that Frank Capra created in 1946. Popular culture absorbed the symbol until it became part of shared American consciousness. Fact 15. The film was nominated for 5 Oscars. It's a Wonderful Life received 5 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture recognition. The film was nominated for Best Director and Best Actor and Best Sound and Best Film Editing. It won none of the awards, losing Best Picture to The Best Years of Our Lives. The loss seemed to confirm that the film was not appreciated in its own time. The Academy chose another film about returning veterans over Capra's darker vision. The rejection compounded the commercial failure and seemed to seal the film's fate. History would prove the Academy wrong, as It's a Wonderful Life grew in stature. The film that lost every Oscar became more beloved than most films that won. Fact 16. George Bailey almost was not saved. Early drafts of the script had much darker endings for George Bailey's story, potentially. Some versions explored George actually jumping from the bridge before Clarence intervenes to save him. The censors at the Production Code Administration demanded significant changes to the suicide content. They worried that depicting suicide, even in a redemptive context, was too dangerous for audiences. Frank Capra fought to maintain the darkness that made the redemption meaningful and earned. The balance between despair and hope was carefully calibrated to satisfy censors and art. The film pushes as far as 1,946 censorship would allow in depicting suicidal thoughts. The darkness that makes the ending powerful almost did not survive the approval process. Fact 17. Bedford Falls was meticulously created. The town of Bedford Falls was one of the largest sets ever constructed for a Hollywood film. The main street stretched for 3 entire city blocks on the RKO Ranch property. Over 75 stores and buildings were constructed with working interiors for filming flexibility. The set included a working water system that could create rain and snow on command. Hundreds of trees were planted and maintained throughout the production schedule carefully. The attention to detail created a town so real that audiences felt they could live there. Bedford Falls became more real than many actual American towns through cinematic craft. The illusion of community was built board by board and brick by brick meticulously. Fact 18. The swimming pool scene was real. The gymnasium floor that opens into a swimming pool was based on a real location. Beverly Hills High School actually had a gym floor that covered a swimming pool identically. Frank Capra had seen this unusual feature and incorporated it into the film directly. The scene where dancers fall into the pool was filmed at the actual high school location. The joy and chaos of that moment represented the youthful freedom George would sacrifice. The scene became one of the most memorable moments despite having nothing to do with the main plot. It showed George and Mary at their happiest before adult responsibilities consumed their lives. A real architectural oddity became a symbol of lost youth and missed opportunities. Fact 19. The film saved Stewart's career. It's a Wonderful Life saved James Stewart's career despite being a commercial failure initially. Stewart had worried that audiences would forget him during his years of military service overseas. The role of George Bailey reminded Hollywood that Stewart was a major dramatic talent still. The performance earned him an Academy Award nomination and critical praise everywhere. Stewart used the role as a springboard to reinvent himself as a dramatic actor afterward. He went on to make his greatest films, including Vertigo and Rear Window following this. The commercial failure did not diminish what the role proved about Stewart's abilities clearly. George Bailey saved James Stewart just as Clarence saved George Bailey in the story. Fact 20. The film became a Christmas tradition. It's a Wonderful Life transformed from forgotten failure to essential Christmas tradition over decades. The public domain status meant television stations played it constantly every December for free. A generation grew up watching George Bailey's journey as part of their holiday rituals. Families developed traditions around viewing the film together during the Christmas season annually. The film became so associated with Christmas that people forget it was released in January originally. The themes of community and gratitude and redemption resonated perfectly with holiday sentiments. What failed in 1946 became indispensable by 1986 through pure repetition and genuine quality. Time transformed a flop into the defining Christmas film for millions of American families.